MP Nigel Dodds returned in North Belfast, joins us now at the DUP. Thanks for joining us and congratulations on your re-election. Just actually on that point, you're Deputy Leader of the DUP, but now are you now effectively the leader at Westminster?
Well, we haven't had our first meeting of the parliamentary group as yet. We'll be having that shortly, so I don't presume to take any title that isn't mine as yet.
OK, all right. Now, Naomi Long has been talking about this idea of a bloc of 13 Northern Ireland MPs working together to represent the region's interests. Does it have merit?
Well, obviously, in the last Parliament, the Northern Ireland MPs did work together on a number of issues. Indeed, we have examples of this in Europe as well, where the three MEPs previously and even now work on issues together. There's nothing new about this. And Naomi will find, as she comes to Westminster and comes there regularly, that this happens a lot anyway. So there's nothing new or novel about all of this. So, yes, I mean, on issues like the protection of the bloc grant, and trying to boost our economy and create the conditions for better inward investment and growing our indigenous companies, there will be a lot of common ground, and we should work together where there is that common ground.
Does it suggest, though, that you're quite relaxed, in a sense, about the position of Northern Ireland within the Union at the moment, without feeling the need to try, perhaps, and exploit some advantage for unionism in particular out of the current situation?
Well, I think it's a matter of making sure that Northern Ireland as a whole can benefit if we can, but bearing in mind that we're conscious of the fact that we are in a very difficult national situation, and I think it would be wrong of us to go in there and throw about whatever weight we have and say we're demanding this for ourselves regardless of the national picture. I think that would be counterproductive in the long run, certainly in this Parliament, for Northern Ireland MPs to behave in this way. And that's why I've been saying the first and foremost consideration has to be political stability. We need a government that's going to last. We need to address the issue of the national deficit. That's by far the biggest issue. But where we will come into play is making sure that Northern Ireland is not unfairly targeted for disproportionate cuts or early cuts, or that Northern Ireland's particular concerns, namely that we've come out of 35 years of violence, we have a land frontier with a competitor, unique circumstances which don't apply anywhere else in the United Kingdom, those must be factored in. But we're not saying that we should be immune from all that's going on in the United Kingdom as a whole. And I think if we don't overplay our hand, as it were, I think we can have a very important role to play in a responsible way at Westminster.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? Because if you were to overplay your hand, that could annoy English voters who would wreak vengeance on anybody that you did a deal with. I mean, what is a reasonable thing to ask, and what is just silly in your view? Yeah,
well, I mean, I think we do have to take cognizance that the vast majority of MPs at Westminster are elected from other parts of the United Kingdom. I mean, even within England, there are regional variations between the northeast and the southwest and the south of England and all the rest of it. And you hear debates all the time about people bearing disproportionate burdens of taxation and all the rest of it. But I think that, it is reasonable, I think, to say Northern Ireland has had all these years of violence. We have suffered terribly as a result of growth the lack of growth in our private sector as a direct result of people actually at one time targeting businessmen for assassination. That's the sort of situation that was going on in Northern Ireland, unique in Western Europe, in a situation where we do have a land frontier with the Republic, and therefore they're able to compete in a way that other parts of the United Kingdom don't have to face in terms of inward investment. So those are fair and legitimate points to make, which I think will have resonance in Westminster. I think what would not be acceptable would be to say we demand immunity from all the cuts that everybody else has to take. What we're saying is we need to get our fair share, but we need to bear in mind that given all that we have been through, we do need time, we need a bit of space, we need to be able to have some kind of consideration in terms of extra incentives for getting that inward investment that other areas have been able to do in other ways.
The contacts Nigel Dodds that Stephen Walker is referring to, they've really been between the Labour Party and yourselves, haven't they, rather than the Conservatives?
Yeah, we have had contacts from Labour, Lib Dems and others as well in the nationalist parties, but there's been nothing from the Conservatives. And let's be clear, I think that there wouldn't be any serious negotiations begun with any of the smaller parties until it was clear that the Lib Dems and Labour were sorted out. So if that's not going to happen, then I don't think there will be a point where we will get into those serious negotiations. But I presume that what the Conservatives are doing is they have maybe learned the lesson of the Lib Dems. They don't want to open up another set of talks or be seen to do that whilst they're still in play with the Lib Dems. nevertheless, our position is very clear. We're willing to talk to any of the parties. We don't rule out anything, but it would have to be in the best interest of Northern Ireland.
Some of the reaction of some of the figures like John Reid seems to be because of the involvement of the SNP in a potential rainbow coalition. Now, there's a visceral hatred between Labour and the SNP there, but there's less of a complication with the local Northern Ireland parties. Could they go it alone without the SNP, as Douglas Alexander has suggested, but with maybe the Welsh and Northern Irish parties?
Well, ironically, I think that a lot of Labour MPs and others indeed would find it easier perhaps to sit alongside Northern Ireland parties in terms of some kind of understanding than they would with the nationalist parties, because they are bitter foes at the polls and in constituencies in Scotland and Wales. But another factor that comes into play in all of this is, don't underestimate the antipathy there is among the Labour backbenchers towards the whole notion of PR, even AV, this alternative vote system. There is a lot of opposition to that, and I think one of the reasons why the Lib Dem Labour deal may be on Skid Row is because the message that's coming through is that even if there is a deal done at leadership level, Labour MPs will not vote for AV, certainly won't vote for it in the absence of a referendum. Here's to Bill Brown's offering in clear breach of his manifesto. And certainly from our position, we're making it very clear we would not agree to any change in voting system or new arrangements for Parliament unless first the British people had the chance to vote for it in a referendum. So they couldn't, the majority on that issue could be down to one. And that's no basis, I think, for Nick Clegg to make a deal with Labour on that.
OK. Just on the assumption that there is some arrangement and as I say, more likely at the moment, it looks perhaps like a Conservative Liberal Democrat deal, and there is a government in place and Parliament resumes double jobbing. How soon will you be quitting your job as an MLA?
Well, I sooner rather than later, because that's our position. Some people will go at different times because it depends on staffing arrangements and other arrangements. We have to be fair to staff and all of that. But we have made a very clear commitment in our manifesto. Our executive has approved the position that any MLAs elected as MPs will give up their MLA position. There was an exception made in the case of the leader of the party. And there may be a view that we need to look at how to maintain some kind of link there between Westminster and the Assembly, but our manifesto position is clear and we will be sticking to that 100%.
And you may be interested to know this, I was listening to it on Radio 4, but a London-based academic, Patrick Dunleavy, has done an analysis of the new Parliament and of all the MPs and come up with a thing called the Power Index, which is how likely is any MP in Westminster to influence any vote, how much power do they have, and guess who he thinks are the most powerful MPs?
Well, I hope he says the DUP.
He does.
Well, he'd be absolutely right on that point. And it vindicates our strategy, and thanks to all the people who voted for us.
Well, I think you can see
in that position.
One academic who might be appearing in election material. Thank you very much indeed, Nigel Dodds.